Hey team, I'm Sam Hintz, and this is the Living Steel Development Vlog Part 3. Lots of progress being made in the game. This one's a big update. So, as you can see, our main character here has a lot more stuff she can do. We've added the light attack string, which looks really cool, really flashy. A block, maybe less flashy, but pretty good for being a block. Got our jump, a jumping attack. Pretty good, pretty good. And when we put a good bit of this stuff together, it's starting to look like a real video game, and that is incredibly exciting. Look at that. Awesome. So, after looking at that a few times, we're going to move on to talking a little more in depth about some of the animations that are new this time, starting with the light attack string. So, the very first thing I did when starting this light attack string is just the key poses, which here they are. You can see them at the end here. I just made some a really rough version of what the blade would be doing, since this last part is kind of it works a little differently. But here we just have our poses, and then we have some blade placement guides per se. Then's the real meat of it, is all the movement, which you can see here. I did all the movement of the body, and already it's starting to look pretty finished. But I assure you, there's a lot more work to be done. Because after this we have the hard part, the secondary animation. This plume always gives me so much trouble. And the trouble it gave me this time was now the hand that I had so carefully posed and drawn for some reason is completely covered up. So nobody's going to notice that I made that mistake if I didn't point it out, but that's a learning experience right there. Don't complete your poses without doing any secondary animation. Then after that, you add all the colors and some effects, some little blue slimes coming off of the sword, and then it's done. So let's talk about this end part right here. So this part is drawn on 2s, but it's for a 60 frames per second game. So that means I'm drawing 1 frame for every 30 seconds, which is, I'm not going to do more than that. I feel like doing 60 frames per second hand-drawn animation, 1, would be inhumane for the amount of work that would take, and 2, would almost look strange next to something that is like our idle animation, which is 6 frames per second, if I did the math right there. And so we want this character to be attacking really fast, because it would be so cool. So we need her to stab more than 30 times in these 60 frames. How are we going to do that? So what we do is we have certain frames like this and like this. She's in an extreme, and you can see clearly what the pose looks like, what the weapon looks like. Everything is very concrete. And then in between those, we're going to have frames like this or this, where the weapon is a blur, the arms are either completely gone or just fragments of color. And sometimes she'll even have 2 or 3 arms. And these will sort of smear. You guys know what smears are, right? These will sort of smear and in a zigzag kind of way, back and forth and all around, unifying our more concrete poses and giving the illusion that she has 1 solid arm that is moving faster than we could possibly see. But it could look a little bit better, I think, which is why I added some effects at the end, which are these blue streaks sort of flying out, almost look like action lines for a background, but they double as also the blue particles that come off the sword. And this effect adds a little to the hecticness of it and makes it look even faster, even more destructive. Very cool. And then we've got some little smoke effects on the floor, because on a few of these, the sword's going so close to the ground, it's kicking up dirt and smoke and rocks and stuff. It makes it look like there's so much force and speed that she's almost losing control of it a little bit, skidding off the ground. And with all those put into place, the end result is pretty convincing. Speaking of effects, I did a bunch of those. We've got this one that's this jump smoke, is what I call it, for jumping. Instead of just floating into the air, you get this nice little ring of smoke and a nice tall trail to be underneath the character, letting people's eyes know where we started and what's happening, and making us sure that she's not just floating off. Little visual reinforcements make a big difference in the end. We've got this, we'll call it a dash smoke. This could probably be used for a variety of things, but same principle. If a movement happens where the character starts to move forward or backward incredibly fast, it doesn't look like there was no force behind it, like they just started shooting off in a direction without having to apply any pressure. So this gives you that impact. They're pushing into the ground and kicking up the dirt. Then we have our hit sparks. I made the white spark-like part, the big kapow mark thing, and thought I could add a little more from there. So I just made an ink splatter and put it behind it, and then I animated it. I drew the rest of the frames normally. So I actually did scan an ink splatter and just put it in there as one of the frames. And that worked great, I think. I really like this one. It looks really... It's very bold with just the black and white and looks very unique, I think. And it really embraces the fact that this is a world full of drawings. It doesn't try to hide from that fact. It looks like you're smacking the lines and the ink off of everybody. Pretty cool. Then I took all of that a step further for our heavy hit spark, which is all those effects and then even more. And this one's got tons of colors. It's got 3 different starbursts happening and way more ink. The ink is going everywhere. And it's got this big lightning bolt through the middle with a little shockwave there, if you can see that. And this one's really intense. The red might be a little much. I made a version with the red and one where the red is not red, and it's all just one kind of tone. I don't know which one I'm going to roll with. Let me know what you think. Afterwards, we've also got our jump animation, which at first glance, it might look like I'm just spinning the sprite, but I'm not. You know I drew it every time. You know I drew it from every different angle. No shortcuts here. And you can see it here slowed down a little. And that goes into our aerial attack. It's just a really ridiculous movement that a real person would never... If a real person did this, it would just look like nonsense. So that's the magic of animation. And then at the end, the plume just kind of lingers there. And the idea is it will just go like that until the character hits the ground, which usually will not be very long. But if it is very long, we have a looping animation to just stay there until she hits something. So, a lot of you are probably thinking, that sounds great. When's the game coming out? Well, let's get into that. Firstly, I don't think I've ever gotten into what the game is actually about. It's a 2D beat-em-up that adapts a few of the modern sensibilities of action games. Feels a little more modern than classic. Every weapon is also a little pet creature that you have to take care of. See, this dog thing and this sword are the same. So you're going to be upgrading your weapons, taking care of your weapons, forming a bond with your weapons, taking your weapons to little mini-game events, making sure they get along with each other, stuff like that. And of course, lots of fighting. So, that's not exactly the simplest, least ambitious project ever for me, one person, to do by themselves. So I needed to strategize and organize what I needed to get done in order to get this project moving faster and to make it more realistic that it could ever be finished. So right now, I am mostly animating and working towards a trailer. And to start with that, I made a list of all the assets I would need for a trailer, which you can see here. So at the beginning you can see all the stuff we need. Aspen is the working name of the main character. I've also been thinking of Mosh, like Mosh Pit, just Mosh for her name. I don't know. We don't know yet. So you can see I've got about half of the main character's animations done, maybe a little more than half. So that's great. She needs to be able to move around without the weapon drawn as well. The pet is probably about halfway done. The walk is going to be tough. Walks are always tough. And then we need a boss and a slag, which is the basic enemy. They're called slag. And you can see I've ticked every individual animation that I need for each thing. And luckily all the effects are almost done. So it's a lot of work, a lot of animation to do, especially with how I'm doing it hand-drawn. But so far I've made a lot of progress. Even if it seems small, it's a lot of work. But at this point, a trailer is starting to look like a realistic goal that I could meet within the next few months, maybe? Now, if you're thinking, this looks cool, you should hire some more people to help with the workload, or I want to work on this, you should hire me. I can do music, or I can do animation. If you're thinking that, I have no money, so that's not an option for me right now. The idea is to get this trailer going and then either get crowdsourced or get... Crowdsourced? Is that a word? Crowdfunded. Or to get picked up by a publisher. Or get a grant or something. There's a lot of places we could go from the trailer, but the trailer is the first step. But for now, I can't hire anyone, so it's got to just be me. And now you're probably thinking, Sam, how do you have time to do all this? And the answer to that is, I just made a book. You've probably heard me plug it in many of my other videos, if you've watched my other videos, which they're there. And right now, since there's a global pandemic and I can't really go to bookstores or do events in the real world, the only thing I can do to market the book is try to get attention on the internet and gather an online following. So for the last year, basically, I've been dipping into every online platform you can think of and just trying to get my footing in all of those, see what works, see what doesn't. And one of the things that gathered way more attention than I thought it would, and more important than attention, is engagement. People seemed genuinely interested in it, was making stuff for the game, which at first I was just trying to do in my spare time, but now it looks like maybe that could be the thing that gets me the online following to help sell books. So that's my excuse. My boss is telling me to keep making stuff like this, so what all of that means is that if you want to support the game somehow, the best way you can do it is following all my social media stuff, subscribing to the YouTube, all of it, you know how it goes, all that stuff. And even better than that, if you bought the book. If you buy the book, that helps me out a lot, that helps me out financially, that helps me out to make more books, to make more art, to get the game off the ground. So yeah, do it yourself, get a few friends to do it, tell your family that my kid's book is the hottest new thing and it's a great gift or something. And as of right now, that is the best way to help the game along. So yeah, do that. Alright, I'm gonna get back to work. Hope you enjoyed. See ya!